Welcome to the last QPR Preview Show before the international break as the R's head to Pride Park to face Derby County. We head there on the back of our first back-to-back defeat since January after losing 3-1 at home to Hull, which was an evening to forget in a week to forget, really, Dave.
Yeah, it's been a really bad week. It's been a bad month, really. I don't think we've really got going since the last international break. The whole game was just so frustrating. I know you covered the Blackburn game with George, but we started the game really well, and it's everything we'd spoken about before that need to do, they did. They moved the ball quickly, creating chances. It was great, but it only lasted 10 minutes. And after that, Hull just grew into the game. And once they scored, I just thought we were a shambles after that. We just weren't in it. They reacted a bit at the start of the second half and again could have got level, but it was just so poor. It was what got me was just a lack of aggression in the team to try and win the ball back. We just kept standing off them and like, you have it and just do what you want with it. The wide guy, was it Miller? I think George mentioned him in the preview show. He just tore us to pieces, but no one ever got close to him. No one put a tackle in on him. So you are allowed to tackle someone. I just didn't get it at all. I just thought it was a really, really poor performance. And the defending for that second goal was criminal. I don't know what Anderson is thinking, just playing around for his own box when they've got everyone forward and giving it away, and then the guy's completely unmarked. It was a shambles. Really, really disappointing.
Yeah, it's one of those matches where we've been doing these shows for 2 years now, and I'm finding it one of the hardest games to analyse, even sitting here now 24 hours on, because it was such an odd game. And I don't know if it's because of how Hull play so open. It was a very, very strange game of football. I didn't think it was as bad as what you've just said there, personally. Like I said, it's really split opinion on our message board and on social media. I genuinely didn't think we were that bad. I thought we were actually worse against Millwall when we got away with it and got a point, probably worse against Sheffield Wednesday too. As you said, we started well, and backing up what you said there, we did improve in a few areas. Only 52% of our passes were in our own half. That's 10% improvement from the last couple of games. Again, whether that was down to how Hull set up or not, we can't be sure. I'd argue the early chances, it's harsh to say we didn't take them, isn't it? Because it was outstanding goalkeeping more than us failing to take a chance. And then all of a sudden we're 2-0 down. The first and third goals fall so kindly for them. So the run of the ball was against us. You're right about the second goal. Anderson just needs to hook it clear and nothing happens. But I acknowledge that other times in the game we did look hopeless, and we'll probably come back to the midfield. And like you say there about Liam Miller, Santos, dreadful. Again, we will come back to that later on. And it was worrying as well that the third goal just seemed to kill us mentally. It was like it was game over and it didn't need to be. And as much as I was saying I didn't think we were that bad for spells of the game, that match could have ended up 4 or 5-1 because we just were gone, weren't we, at the end of the game?
Yeah.
So just a very hard one to sum up. What was the general consensus and atmosphere like when you were leaving the ground?
Like you said, mixed. There were some people like me that were fuming and wanted to burn the place down. And there were some that were going, well, if we'd have taken our chances in that first half, if that one in the first minute, Fields a great volley, and how he saves the rebound from Anderson, it was a great save. One of them goes in, you go 1-up. If you get 11 at 2-2 in the second half, we had chances. Completely different game and different mindset. But just I think it's probably a combination of things. It's been 4 or 5 pretty poor performances in a row, and I think it got to the point I thought everyone was a little bit fed up. And again, it's at home. Our home form is dreadful and has been for about 2-3 years. It picked up towards the end of last season, but again, we're in October and we haven't won at home yet, and it is really frustrating.
Yeah, you're saying there about fine margins in the game. Saito hit the post when it was 2-1, didn't he?
Yeah.
Again, a key moment, and it decides how the match ends up. It just splits opinion in the game. Some good, some bad. And we have to say as well, considering Marti Cifuentes, he talks about tactics so much. We don't look at the moment, do we, a particularly well-drilled team.
No, definitely not. We were just wide open at times about the ball, and just saying again about Miller, he was tearing Santos apart, but someone come over and help him. It was clear from the first 20 minutes that that was a problem, but no one was coming over to double up on Miller and stop him. And I just didn't get it. And I just don't think it works having Madsen and Anderson in the same team. They both want to go forward, and just leaves Field completely on his own. And we're just wide open, especially when we lose the ball. teams are counting on us, and towards the end, like you said before, they could have scored another 2 or 3 towards the end. Nardi did well again to keep the score down. It looks so different to last season. We were so well organised last year. It just doesn't look like that at the minute, and I do think Cifuentes is going to have to go back to being a bit more pragmatic, like he was last year, with how we're set up, and just make us harder to beat. I just think we look wide open.
Yeah, he's probably maybe only a few more results away from having to take some action, isn't he? I just expect things like the shape and patterns of play to become second nature at this level. You pass the ball, someone's going to be there, someone's going to be covering you. But there's so many times in the game where it doesn't look like we're on the same wavelength at all. We can have a lovely passage of play, but in the next move, anyone and everyone's just giving it away. And that's what is so odd for me at the moment. We seem to have lost sight of what we're doing from 5 minutes to the next. And we can't have these big swings in our performance levels because it's going to cost us if it keeps going on. Like I say, he's probably going to have to change something. Like I say, we're going to circle back to some individual performances later in the show when we preview the trip to Derby. But before we move on, we have to mention quickly the fans forum. Brian will be speaking to Matthew, who was in attendance in more detail in the International Break Rangers roundup next week. But of course, it was announced mid-forum that Marti, Cifuentes and assistant Xavi Calm have signed new deals. What did you make of that?
I thought it was clever doing them announcements during it. That was the headline from it, that Cifuentes had signed a new deal and we'd signed Dembele and Clark-Salter had signed a new deal. So it was all positive news. As the forum as a whole, I thought it was done slightly differently. When they seemed to answer the questions they wanted, they didn't have as much from the floor, which sometimes can be better because you get some weird questions sometimes, didn't you? But I think with these things, it's same before when it was Les Ferdinand doing it or ever doing it. It always sounds good what they're planning to do. We want to bring players through the academy. We want to sign player data driven, this kind of stuff. It all sounds brilliant. It's how it works in practice. Les Ferdinand spoke for 8 years about bringing players through the academy. It never really happened. The recruitment wasn't that great under him. It still doesn't look that great now, but it's the same people doing it. So it all sounded good, and I thought Nuri come across really well. But you kind of want to see action rather than words sometimes. I'd like to see how this actually works out this time.
Yeah, I agree. Nori, he comes across well, but for me, he's just someone who seems to say a lot without actually really telling you anything. It's quite clever the way he speaks. The announcement of the new contract to the managers, obviously, he wants to bring stability to the club, saying Marti's here, and this is what we're doing. This is the club's direction, and I do see that as a positive. And if we're going to go for a bad run now, at least it's going to get rid of any speculation because in the modern game, people will call for the manager's head straight away, especially if and when we maybe drop into the bottom three as well. Do you sense though, Marti Cifuentes, his honeymoon period is over?
Possibly. I mean, it's the first time really. It's been here nearly a year now. It's the first time we've had a run like this where we, not necessarily just the results, but performances have been really poor, and we haven't been that good all season really. So I think that is a slight concern. But look, I mean, I don't think we're nowhere near the point of thinking about getting rid of him. In my opinion, I think he will turn it around. I think there's a lot of the problems we've got are fixable. I don't think it's a complete disaster at the minute. But if results do continue, he is going to come under a bit of pressure. Because a lot of the expectations were high this season, and like you say, we could be in the bottom three by the time this goes out. It's not great at the minute.
No, I think talking about expectations is probably right thing to trigger on because I'd say 90% plus of QPR fans maybe expected us to have a better start to the season than what we've had. And when you only get one league win in 8 games, getting a few dissenting voices out there, it's probably par for the course. And you're right, he couldn't really fail last season from where he came into the club. So everything was always going to be positive. And now this season, when we're not hitting the mark, he's going to get some criticism, obviously, and it's not unjust at the moment. It deserves to be criticised, and we are in this show even. But longer term, I still feel confident things are going to come good. I mean, if you look at our XG, both for and against, they're in the top half, and they usually say that's a good indicator of where you're going to end up. I just hope I don't end up with egg on my face saying that. Let's move on to Derby.
Oh, sorry.
Go on. No, you say.
No, I do think this is probably a harder job this year than last year. I know we were in a terrible position when he came in and it was a bit of a mountain to climb, but it was a case of tighten things up and just get over the line. And they did have enough to get out of that last year when they brought in a few players. This time it's be a bit more expansive, get in the top half of the division. And with the squad they've got, I don't think this is a top half squad. I think there's some good players in it, but it's not necessarily a top half squad, and that's the expectation. And this is going to be a harder job for him. And I'm sure he'll do it because I've got a lot of faith in him. I think he's a really good manager, but this is going to be a tricky one for him.
Yeah, I agree. All I'd say is that anyone who's thinking like, oh, we need to change the manager or whatever, last season he was the man who saved us from a bad position. So surely he's the man you'd want again. And I've used the same phrase over and over on these shows, but he's proven to be adaptable. And I have no doubt that if, for example, we lose to Derby and we come back after the break and we lose to Portsmouth, he will change things and he will. We know what he's like with players. He's giving them the chance at the moment, but if they continue to let him down, we won't see them again. We've seen it with so many players in his 1 year in charge so far. He will take action, but he's obviously just trying to hope things turn good. And as we said against Hull, it's only a few chances here and there, a few key moments, and we get something from the game, and it doesn't feel as bad, does it? So
yeah,
let's hope things do improve at Derby. And of course, they're back in the Championship after one season in League One. And we can't mention this match without, of course, mentioning the playoff final now over 10 years ago. That match was one of the last 20 meetings in which randomly neither side has scored more than twice. Not sure how that's happened, but last time either of the sides scored more than two was back in 2009. And that was the match that was obviously on BBC back in the time when QPR came back to win 4-2. Half of the last 16 meetings have ended 1-0, and that included the playoff final. Derby, they've had a very all or nothing start to the season, no draws, 3 wins, 5 defeats, and they come into this on the back of 3 straight league defeats. The harsh reality of the Championship probably setting in now. Regardless of that, it's just a battle of 2 out of form sides, isn't it?
It is. I mean, they've been good at home. I thought they were a bit unlucky at the weekend against Norwich. They had 2 of Norwich's goals, the ball was out of play and shouldn't have really been given. I think they've been good at home and they're probably where they expected to be. They're newly promoted. I don't think expectations will be too high for them this year, but they've equipped themselves well. And, it'd be tough to go there. But there's always going to go back to the playoff final whenever we play Derby, aren't we? They're always going to want to beat us forever now after what we done to them that day. We're always going to, hark back to it. But it's a difficult game because, like I said, I think they're quite a strong side at home.
Yeah, definitely. And we should recognise their defeats have all come against teams way up the league table. Blackburn, Watford, Sheffield United, Norwich, Sunderland. They've had a tough start when you look where those teams are. And last Saturday, Norwich were the first away team to even score at Pride Park this season. So they're going to be hoping to continue getting back to that strong home form. Do you know anything about how they like to play, the formation, anything like that?
They from what little I've seen them, they seem quite aggressive going forward. They have some decent forwards for this level. The bits I saw against Norwich last week, they weren't afraid to get the ball in the box and cause problems. And it's kind of a thing that we're not very good at defending against, which is a concern. And they press high up the pitch, which again could be an issue for us when we're trying to play out. It seems to be been a problem the last few games. So they're not ideal opponents for us when we're out of form. But like I say, they're not in the best of form the last few games either. So, that probably cancels that out.
Yeah, I wonder after 3 straight defeats whether they're going to try and be just solid at home in this one. They won't want to lose 4 in a row, will they? Because regardless of how you've been playing, it's never good for your confidence to go on a run like that. One thing that is for sure is, though, from their perspective, they're going to be looking at their fixtures on paper. QPR at home, sliding down the table as we are, 1 win so far this season. This is a match they're going to be thinking, we have to win to be successful at this level. Because if the boot was on the other foot, we'd be going mad if we were going to lose a fixture like this. Let's go back to QPR, and I actually don't even know where to start, which question to ask first. We've gone on and on about missing Jack Colback, haven't we? So let's touch on Clark Salter in defence, because it's highlighting how much we missed him against Hull. We're just dreadful at the back without him, aren't we?
We are, and it's that balance at the back. He's got a good left foot and he works well with Cook. And I like Jimmy Dunn. I think he's a good player, but he's not suited to that left side, I don't think. And I think he struggled a little bit with that. And basically, he's just not as good as Clark Salter. And the problem we've got without Clark Salter is there isn't that many other options. It means you probably have to play Santos right back, who hasn't looked great so far, and it disturbs the whole back four. So we definitely miss him. And if he is out for a prolonged period, which seems quite possible at the minute, we're definitely going to miss him.
Yeah, it's still no clean sheet even when he's been playing, so it's even worse when he's not. I wasn't impressed with any of the defenders against Hull, even Steve Cook, who you can usually rely on. his second goal, he was ball watching, and I thought he looked really tired. It's obviously he's having to play every game, even the cup game. He looks like he needs the international break to have a rest. Santos, I don't want to be too harsh on a new player, but he was really bad. You don't take that match as it was. He was poor. He was almost like Aaron Drew-esque for me, like trying his hardest, but just looked out of his depth, panicking when he had the ball. And I don't know how he stayed on the pitch. I actually thought that was poor management because he was clearly struggling even in the first half. He was getting tore to shreds, like I say. So should have took him off. And then maybe some of the things that happened in the second half wouldn't have happened. If Jake Clark-Salter's not fit at this match, can you see Fox coming in? Because we know he's back in the squad, or Jimmy Dunn at right back. What do you think is going to happen?
There is potential for that. If Fox is back, he could play him in there. I mean, I think he would probably ideally, if he could, put Field back to centre half and play Dunn right back. But with Colback out, you need Field in midfield. It's hard to fit them all in. So it on Fox, it depends on his fitness, doesn't it? He does seem to like him. He did put him in a lot towards the end of last season. So if he's fit, that is a possibility with Dunn going to right back. Gives us a bit more balance in there.
Yeah, I suspect Clark-Salter, even if he's verging back on fitness, they know they've got 2 weeks off though, so do you risk his recovery? It's a tricky one, isn't it? And all I would say is I don't think it'll be the same four defenders lining up against Derby, even if it's without Clark-Salter, maybe Ashby, like you say, Fox. There's something going to change. I don't think he'll go with the same again. Let's touch on the midfield. I mean, we've spoken about it every single week, but it's just a mess. How does he fix it?
He needs Colback a bit sharpish, to be honest. So I think when we looked at our best last year, they had the two holding, and then you hold in midfield players, and then you can let the attacking players go a little bit. They can't go again. Definitely away from them playing Anderson and Madsen in midfield. Field, it just doesn't. It's just not going to work. We're just too wide open with it. So I think he's got to go with one or the other with Madsen and Anderson. I'd probably go Madsen. He took the penalty well. Didn't think he was particularly good last night, but Anderson's in such poor form. I'd probably leave him out and just hope Colback's back. If not, then Varane comes back in.
Yeah, I don't even know. Has Ryan got maybe a 3-match suspension if it was for
I think it was only. Oh yeah, I don't know. Maybe
yeah, I've not looked. But what's concerning for me is that the tactics of the squad just don't work as soon as Colback is out, which suggests they're not the right tactics, though, because you can't have tactics that only suit one player in the team. You're going to have to find something that's a bit more adaptable and suits everybody. You're right about Madsen. It's clear he just doesn't suit that deeper role. Him playing with Field leaves us too open, like you said before, and he doesn't move quickly enough, does he? So for someone who wants to drift between positions from deep to advanced, he just doesn't seem to suit it at all. So I don't know. And Dixon Bonner as well, he's not really impressing. So it's just tough to pick a midfield and to know what would be right to keep it solid, to try and go for goals. The mix is just not there, is it? Searching for positives, we had the performance of Saito, the return of Ilias Chair. Do you think both or either of them will start against Derby?
I mean, Chair will probably be on the bench again. I think they'll try and ease him back in. Saito, I thought was really good again, and I thought he played well. He was one of the few bright spots in that game. Thought he did all right at Blackburn as well, to be honest. So I'd probably start him. Dembele's form's gone a bit, hasn't it, recently? But I think I'd still start him ahead of Smith. I always think Smith's better coming off the bench, especially in away games when you may be chasing it later on. I think he's probably better off the bench. So yeah, that's probably two I'd go with, and then bring Chair on second half.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Cherry's just a boost having him back, but I don't think he'll be starting. He looked very rusty, didn't he? Understandably.
Yeah.
He wasn't really playing his natural game when he came on. Saito, he was great. I thought he was impressive, but he looked very tired towards the end. I mean, I don't want to blame him for the third goal, but he couldn't get back to double up on Miller. Yeah. And he just looked dead on his feet. So it's a quick turnaround. Will he mean he's rested? But we don't really want to play Anderson and Madsen in the same team. Lloyd and Smith, they haven't done that much when they've come off the bench in recent games. I mean, Smith did okay, I suppose, when he started against Blackburn. It's just so hard. And like I agree on Dembele as well. He just looks like he maybe needs a rest and a reset and come back fresh after the break. But all of these question marks are exactly why QPR are struggling. We just have no balance, don't have a settled team. Hopefully we can find that in the next group of fixtures after the break. But for now, your predictions for Derby. QPR have won 4 of the last 5 against Derby. Will we make it 5 out of 6?
Well, despite moaning for the last 20 minutes, I do think we could get something at the weekend. They said we've got quite a good record there, and I'm sure we're going to see a better performance. So I'm going to go for a very close win, maybe 2-1.
I think obviously we're going to be desperate to go into the break in a better place, trying to get a result. But Derby are going to be thinking the same thing. They certainly, like us before, will not want to be heading into this international break on the back of 4 straight defeats. So I said the stat before about it rarely being a high scoring game, and I think it could be 1-0. I can't actually decide which way it's going to go. I'll have to look at the lineup, I guess, on Saturday first. But I just expect a very cagey game. Nothing like Hull, probably more like the first half against Blackburn, but hopefully without the sending off this time. Do let us know your thoughts on what you felt wrong against, what went wrong against Hull, and what Marti can do to fix it against Derby in the comments. As I mentioned before, Brian and Matthew will be here in the international break with the latest Rangers roundup. Then we'll be back in a fortnight. Thankfully, we're getting a break, and we'll then be back to preview a match against another newly promoted side as we host Portsmouth. Enjoy the break. Thank you for watching, and come on your horse.
We know who we are. You know who we are. We are QPR.